All right, let's bring in energy analyst Chris Yelland now. Chris, thank you so much for joining us. I think we were hoping, expecting perhaps in the region of a 9 or 10% increase, which is what we saw last year. But as my colleague Rupiwa Madzena was explaining a little earlier, this had to be revised because Nersa's court case with Eskom had an impact. In fact, Eskom, therefore, I suppose, was proven right. But this is going to be a massive blow for the consumers, surely.
Yes, you're absolutely right. Of course, it's going to come as a great shock to customers. And what really irks customers the most is that currently, about 8 hours or every 24 hours, we don't have power at all. So, there's this massive price increase, which, as you say, is 18.65 on the 1st of April. And then a further 12.74 on the 1st of April next year. That is a total of 33.7% increase over the next 2 years at a time when 1/3 of the day we don't have power. That's really what sticks in people's throats.
Yeah, I think people are absolutely fed up about that. And even, Vincent Magwenya, presidential spokesperson this afternoon, was saying that the president deeply regrets the level of load shedding we are in, and he's asked the electricity crisis committee to really speed things up. I'm not sure that apologies and words are cutting it at all for the South African consumer.
Well, the talk has been ongoing since 2008. And the president announced his emergency plan to end load shedding fast 6 months ago. And what we're not seeing is we're not even seeing signs visibly that anything is actually being done, let alone things are actually improving. In fact, things are getting worse. So I think there's a huge amount of cynicism by the public. And I think that it's going to reflect in the polls, in the elections. If this situation continues till 2024, to the elections, it's going to have an impact politically.
Yeah. I want to speak to you as well about the tone coming from the energy regulator. A couple of things they said. Asking Eskom, are we addressing the correct problem? And then in relation to maintenance, are these not within Eskom's power to control? And also saying that the open cycle gas turbines can't just be used willy-nilly, saying that Eskom has to reach a point of energy efficiency, speaking as if Eskom is almost deliberately not producing. What do you make of the tone coming from Nersa?
I don't buy it. I don't buy their tone. I don't buy what they are suggesting. They're also suggesting, and when you press them, they become very vague. They started off by saying that there is some non-negotiables in respect of Eskom's performance. And one of those non-negotiables they started off by saying was that its energy availability factor should be 72%. And yet, when I pressed them hard and said, just be very clear on this, what is your non-negotiable energy availability factor for Eskom for the 23-24 financial year? And what's the non-negotiable EAF, that you're talking about the 24-25 financial year? All of a sudden, things got really vague, and they said, well, they're not actually setting a target. So are they setting a target? Are they not setting? Are they setting a non-negotiable requirement? Are they not? We don't even know. And it's clear that they don't know either. The reality is, let's now talk reality. The reality is that the energy availability factor is on a downward declining trend. And it has been so for the last 5 years. And the EAF is the average performance of 90 generators, 90. And you cannot maintain or fix them simultaneously. What this means mathematically is that the energy availability factor is a continuum. It's a graph that is called a continuum. There cannot be, in an average of 90 generators, where you can't maintain them all at once, there cannot be a discontinuity or a step change or sudden change in direction of a trend. It is a continuum, and at first has to, there's a downward trend, it has to slow down, it has to bottom out, it has to stabilize, and then slowly it's got to rise again over several years. It is mathematically impossible for this to happen in 23/24 and 24/25. So talk of 70%, 75% energy availability factor is just misleading the public, and it's not achievable by Eskom anyway.
So here's the thing, Chris, and I want your input on this. I'm getting a sense that there's a narrative building, that there's going to be obviously a change in leadership at Eskom because Andre de Ruyter is leaving, along with others who have already left or are planning to leave, and that potentially was part of the problem. Now, I don't know if that's the case or not, but there's two options: that the leadership was wrong and part of the problem, or that the problem is so difficult and intractable that this is the best pretty much anyone could do. Nersa seems to be saying, do better, we know you can do better, this is in your control. Do you think Nersa's right? Do you think that Eskom could be doing better to make their coal fleet more efficient, for example?
Look, we can always be doing better. The question is, does changing the deck chairs on the Titanic change the fundamental problem or not? Is the problem a person, or are there deep fundamental structural issues, financial issues, operational issues, environmental issues, issues of governance, that have been there and led up to this situation that we're in, which are going to take many years to resolve? I don't think, and I think it's just the blame game and finding a scapegoat to think that you can change the board or change the CEO or change the minister responsible for Eskom. That doesn't change the fundamentals, and the fundamentals are going to take time to change, and it's not going to be easy.
So Nersa said that they based their decision to approve this more than 18% increase from April this year on very clear methodology, that it was a very, very difficult decision. Did they have any choice, really? If you look at the financial crisis and the deep hole that Eskom is in, it's going to be an absolute bloodbath for consumers. But did Nersa really have a choice but to increase to this extent for Eskom, bearing in mind the problems they're facing?
Now, I don't think they really had a choice. Remember, there's two parts to this price increase. There's a part where Eskom has, where Nersa has absolutely no discretion. They are court-ordered increases that they failed to give Eskom in the past, and the court has ordered them to do it, and they either have to do it or they'll be in contempt of court. Those are the non-discretionary part of the increase. The other part of the increase are Nersa's normal increases, and based on operations. So in the past, Nersa has deviated from its own methodology, saying that it needs to take into account the interests of customers and the interest of the economy, and it's using its discretion, and it's performing this difficult balancing act, etc. And time again, it has been challenged and lost in court and overruled. And then there's this catch-up game, this clawback, which we're seeing at the moment. Now, Nersa have said now, this time around, they are just sticking to their methodology, because the courts have said time and time again, your determination was not in terms of your own methodology. So now they are actually applying their methodology much more strictly, and not, getting involved in this very fuzzy sort of issues about, is it in the economic interest of the customer? They are sticking to the methodology. The point that was made by the CEO of Nersa, and I think he's right, you've either got to stick to your methodology or you've got to change your methodology. But you can't have a methodology and then calmly ignore it and not stick to it. So this time round, they're sticking to their methodology, but in the background, there's a process to change their methodology in due course.
All right, thank you very much for explaining that to us. Energy analyst Chris Yelland there.